say congratulations to the United States for finally confirming Brett Kavanaugh as our next Supreme Court justice. Now we have a 5-4 domination. We have Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, Clarence Thomas, John Roberts, Samuel Alito on our side, opposed to Elena Kagan, Shawna Sotomayor, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Stephen Breyer. Once Ruth Bader Ginsburg and or Stephen Breyer pass away or retire, we'll be able to get 2 more conservatives in there, because that'll probably happen while Trump is in office. But for now, I digress. Let's get back to Brett Kavanaugh. There were so many protesters. There were so many people that were against his nomination. You had people that were trying to prey on the weak individuals in the Senate, like Jeff Snowflake. There was one particular moment that we need to speak about, but before we speak about that, let's bring up this clip from Vice News bureau chief, whatever she is, Shawna Thomas. She got on television and spoke about how some of these so-called protesters were in fact paid. Now, Vice News, as we all know, is a very leftist, liberal type of organization. So if she's getting on TV talking about they're paid, she's probably onto something. And I think most of us already know this anyway. But after we get done with the clip, I'll talk about what she said, and then I'll talk about these protests in a little bit more detail. So without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it.
Vice News actually spent a lot of time with the protesters over this past week. We saw the president say these are professional protesters paid by George Soros, et cetera, et cetera. Who were these people? What was going on?
A lot of them were normal people who were mad. We hung out with a group from Alaska who was very specifically talking to Lisa Murkowski. A lot of them were Native Americans, which also played into Lisa Murkowski's decision. They actually felt a lot of respect for her because she brought them into their office. She had a real conversation with them. And we also saw people who were organized. And that moment with Jeff Flake on the Hill, we talked to one woman who works for UltraViolet, who was paid. She helped steer people in the right ways to be able to confront senators.
So there were paid.
There were people who were paid by organizations like UltraViolet to try to harness that energy in a way that would make the viral moments that we ended up seeing.
All right, so you saw that. You see what's going on. Now, that is pretty crystal clear. Didn't I tell y'all in the video before that the whole thing with Jeff Flake was a setup? Didn't I say it? Now, some of my more liberal friends will come at me and say, oh, well, ABL, you don't know that. You don't have the evidence. You're just mad that they were able to confront him and make it go viral. Please, let's be real. All you got to do is look into the background briefly, and then you'll be able to see what's going on. I mean, the one person, Anna Maria Artilla, if that's her name, she had links in her Twitter bio to some of these radical organizations. Obviously, somebody's getting paid. These organizations aren't just there just for no reason. Either they're getting paid from individual donors, from one big donor, or from both. Somebody's got to fund these operations. All right. Now, it was kind of funny to see Shawna on there talking about, oh, they were organized. You know, I think that's the code word among the liberal circle for we got paid to do this. All right. Maybe if she's questioning on this in the future, she'll come out and say, well, in order to have these things organized, there has to be some kind of monies that are paid because this stuff costs. Right. It's not going to be a free operation to get individuals from point A to point B. If they live out of town, it has to be paid for. But at the end of the day, we all know that these individuals are not just doing it just because, like, if it was only about the individual that you're trying to protest against, if it was only about trying to uphold the so-called rule of law in the country, then there would be no need for these people to get paid. They would bring themselves to DC on their own dime, and then they go out there, protest, rant, holler, scream, rave, whatever they want to do. Some of these protests have really been just ridiculous. I saw the one where they were banging on the door. I think that was to the Supreme Court. Now, they weren't even really banging on the door. They were kind of lightly tapping it, just enough to get on camera and have people think that they're banging on the door trying to get in. But like I said on my podcast, they were not hitting the door with enough force for you to even hear them if they were at your front door to your house. They were lightly tapping the door. They weren't really trying to get in. I believe that these individuals were paid to go out there and put on the show for the cameras to have this air of quote unquote resistance. And then there was this scene where some of these individuals were out there singing hand in hand. You had one male, female, I don't know what to call this individual, but they were out there with their breasts out, with a mustache on. I was totally confused. I'm like, okay, what do I call this individual here? And if you want to see that, and of course, NSFW, because I don't know if that individual is showing nudity or not, but I will place that in the description box below. I'll let you hear some of the actual song right here.
March on, my sisters, and remain strong. This is our battle cry. This is our song. The war is raging. The war is raging.
So that is their defeat song. That is their losing song. And my question to them is, what are you really going to accomplish? I understand some of you may be getting paid, and that is probably the incentive behind doing this. But aside from getting money in your pocket, aside from getting on television, aside from getting attention, what are you really doing? You being out there singing and crying and all that kind of good stuff is not going to help your cause. Actually, what you're doing is hurting your cause, because that's rallying those of us that are normal individuals against you. When you turn on the television as a regular normie and you see some dude with his breasts out and a mustache on singing a song of defeat, holding the black power fist, and how do you pro-blacks feel about that? These white liberals who look like creatures from The Walking Dead co-opting the black power fist. If I was you, I'd be totally triggered, but I digress. To get back to my point, when regular people see that on television, they're totally turned off. It's like, okay, this individual over here has some mental issues. I don't want to associate with that at all. I want to go over to a different way of thinking. They may not necessarily go over to the right away, but at least they'll be away from you. And that just helps us. You have very close races that are happening right now in the midterms. And I almost kind of want to say that Trump did this on purpose as far as putting Neil Gorsuch out there. Maybe he knew the letter existed. I don't know. But maybe he did that because he knew that he'd be exonerated, and then he would understand how much it would galvanize the Republican base. That's, a super tinfoil hat theory I have. So don't nobody say, oh, ABL said that Trump. No, I'm just saying it's almost too good to be true. It's like he planned it, even though I doubt it, because all the negativity that has surrounded Neil Gorsuch has done nothing but galvanize the Republican base. And I'm all for it. These individuals, when they keep on doing what they're doing, they are probably getting paid by individuals who don't really understand what's happening, or maybe it's a different plan that I don't see. Either way it goes, all they're doing is helping us. So if you want to keep helping us, I say go for it, boss. That's a good thing for me to get more people on our side. Ted Cruz has a close race in Texas, and I think after the whole Gorsuch kerfuffle, the gap between him and Beto O'Rourke widened, with it being in favor of Ted Cruz. So you're not helping your cause, crazy liberals out there with the black power fist, with your amorphous gender on display for the entire world to see. You're not helping paid protesters. All you're doing is damaging your own cause. You're pushing your particular party further to the left. And as you go further to the left, people that you're trying to get on your side are left on an island of sorts, and nobody's there to rescue them, because as you're going away from them, we're going towards them by trying to get everybody up under the umbrella. You see a guy like myself with the MAGA hat on, you're going to see a lot more of that. You're going to see more people identifying as center right, libertarian, conservative, classical liberal than ever before, as long as the majority stance in the liberal party or in the leftist persuasion is of total chaos and confusion. So what do you think? Do you think that this person from Vice News, Shawna Thomas, is credible because she comes from Vice News? Do you think that this organization, UltraViolet, exists? I've not done research on that, but if I can find some links on them, I put them in the box. How do you feel about Trump invoking George Soros's name? And before I even continue, it's not just George Soros. There are a lot of other very rich people that have a particular motive in mind, have an ulterior motive. George Soros is one of them. He gets mentioned a lot. We all know that. He's been on television talking about what he does. There are other people you don't see behind the scenes that are big money players that want to get involved with this whole culture war that we're experiencing right now in the USA. The culture war is happening, but I don't think it's really on the big scale. I think it's on a smaller scale than most of us really think about. The average person is not really into politics that you meet out in the street. Those of us that are in it may kind of over-exaggerate it because of how close we are to it. But either way it goes, the culture war is a problem, and it is having an impact on politics, whether it be a large impact or a small impact. It's enough to see. And this whole thing with Brett Kavanaugh, I think, starts in the small group of people and then balloons its way out to the general public, which is why you're seeing a gap in between Ted Cruz and the Beto O'Rourke in favor of Ted Cruz. You're seeing a gap in other races in favor of the conservative person and against the liberal person, because people don't like how the liberals are behaving, their presumption of guilt, foregoing innocence. But I'm kind of rambling at this point, so whatever your comments are, please let me know in the comments